All right, so I just published a blog post, and it turns out there is an RFC. It just went to voting that actually addresses the issues I'm trying to solve here, and which I'm writing about in this blog post. So yeah, this is in voting phase. Let's see here, 15 votes for, 4 against. So it needs a 2/3 majority to pass, and it looks like it will actually pass. That's super cool. There is a lot to tell about this RFC. I realize that it might be a bit complex. There is a lot of reflection stuff going on, but still it's super interesting, and it's so nice to see that this will probably end up in PHP 8.4 fixing the issue I'm describing here. So at least I hope it will fix the issue. I haven't read through the RFC yet, but we're going to do that right now. It's a beefy RFC, but first let me quickly share what I wrote about here today. I'm building an ORM. Of course I am. I'm building a framework. An ORM is part of that. Call me crazy. I like it. So one of the things I want this ORM to do, let's see here, is to write these kinds of models. This is the code users write. And if you've written any code in any framework before, you know that if we use an ORM, we have models or entities, they have relations to other classes, other objects. And that's how relations are denoted here. Author is a belongs to relation, and an array of chapter has many relation. And the problem here is that you don't want to load relations by default, because imagine what happens if you just load everything that's related to each other. You will have memory issues. You will have probably some query issues as well. Yeah, you cannot load everything. Same in Symfony, the same in Laravel. There are ways to deal with that: eager loading, lazy loading. So I'm going to solve that as well. The thing is, if I leave these properties uninitialized, author and chapter, there's no way to hook into them with magic getters. Let's see here. Yeah, if I would provide a magic getter method to hook into the property loading. So if it's uninitialized, if a relation wasn't reloaded and you try to access it, then two things can happen. Either if it's allowed to be lazy loaded, we will perform another query and load the relation behind the scenes, and otherwise we'll throw an exception. It's kind of different than how Laravel works, but you know, that's why I'm building my own framework. I want things to be a little bit different in some places. I love Laravel, by the way. Don't misunderstand it. So let's see here. Yeah, magic getters don't work because let's scroll up again. These properties over here, they actually exist on the object, but they just are uninitialized. And if you try to access them, PHP will throw an error. And so that's not really nice, because we cannot use magic getters to access these properties. So we cannot have our framework magic in between, you know? And that's the problem I'm trying to solve. Right now, it is solvable. What you have to do is to, after constructing the book object here, you have to manually, you have to unset these two properties, like call unset book author, unset book chapters. And as soon as you've done that, even though the properties are still defined in the class, even though they were uninitialized, you can unset them, and then the properties are actually removed from the object, meaning that the magic getter will work. Anyway, that's a short summary of this blog post. If you want to read it, I'll leave a link in the description. Let's see here that unsetting happens here in the mapper, you know, the ORM, basically, the thing that takes data and maps it into an object. That's the benefit of having an ORM. There is a mapper in between, so there is a place where you can actually do this kind of magic hacking in PHP. It works. But this RFC is going to improve that a lot, because as you can imagine, relying on magic getters, unsetting properties is kind of messy. You know, it works. It's PHP, but it should be better. And I think this is the exact problem why this RFC was created. And I hope it will solve all my problems. So let's read through it. Transparent, lazy initialization, I'm already stuttering here, of objects is an important part of many PHP applications. However, achieving this kind of laziness in userland is complex, limited, and can have a significant performance impact. And this proposal aims to bring lazy initialization to the PHP engine to mitigate these drawbacks. Perfect. This RFC is created by Arno and Nicolas. By the way, Arno is part of the foundation. Nicolas is core contributor of Symfony, and together they've made this RFC. So like these are people, they know what they're doing. So that's pretty nice. Nicolas was a guest on this channel when we celebrated 29 years of PHP, I think. There was a live stream a couple months ago. And he actually talked about his RFC contributions as well. He doesn't write the code. Arno does that. But Nicolas helps shapes the API. So Martin Fowler identifies 4 strategies to implement lazy loading using OOP. Wow. Okay. They're going to summarize it here. Lazy initialization, value holders, virtual proxies, referenced as proxies hereafter, and ghost objects. This RFC focuses on proxies and ghost objects, which provide transparent lazy loading. Unlike lazy initialization and value holders, proxies and ghost objects do not require a class to be written with the lazy loading concept in mind. Instead, the lazy loading behavior can be attached externally. That's cool. So the class itself, like my model class here, let's see over here. This one doesn't need to know about anything. Just the framework can handle it. It's a good strategy. In both strategies, the lazy object is attached to an initializer or factory that is called automatically when these objects are used. Interesting. From an abstraction point of view, lazy ghost objects from this RFC are indistinguishable from non-lazy one. They can be used without knowing they are lazy. This is a core design principle of this RFC. And this is exactly this is good. From the outside, you're just dealing with a book here. It's typed as a book, and all objects that are created lazily or not, they will be books, right? This is good. I'm sure there will be lots of examples here, but I'm just already very excited about it. So lazy loading of objects in PHP is already used in business critical situations. For example, Symfony uses them in its dependency injection component to provide lazy services that are fully initialized only if needed. And the doctrine ORM, I'm building an ORM as well, makes its entities lazy, allowing objects to hydrate themselves from the database only when accessed. So this is exactly my use case as well. When you load a book, right, and you don't have the relation loaded, by default nothing will happen in Tempest. Well, you'll get an error, and that's very, very well done on purpose, because I don't want everything to be lazy loaded. It leads to a lot of performance issues, the n.+1 issue, right? Where you have a loop, for example, over here, the author isn't loaded, and you just keep performing queries for every iteration here. And that's just, I wrote about it here as well. That's what Laravel does. And Laravel has options to disable lazy loading by default. But it leads to so many performance issues. And so I decided to have it disabled by default. You can make properties lazy if you want to. You can, let's see here, you can tag them with the attribute and then it will work. But by default, it doesn't work. Anyway, the source of many n+1 issues, but this is exactly what I need. I need a way to hook into here. Other use cases include JSON parsers that use lazy objects to defer parsing unless those objects are accessed. This is, there are so many use cases for this. If you write a bit more complex lower level code, really cool. Implementing proxies and ghost objects in userland is non-trivial. They have been, it has been explored in Ocramius Proxy Manager and later in Symfony var exporter. Current implementations have several limitations, including incompatibility with final classes and performance overhead due to magic methods. So my workaround here is to just unset the properties, but I want to I want to stress here that like I have a very, very opinionated solution that works for my like framework syntax that I've settled upon, like all public properties for models, and like relations are defined by the type and stuff like that. It's very limited to a very specific use case. So something like Symfony var exporter has to take care of so many more edge cases that I don't really worry about right now. So this RFC proposes to implement ghost objects and state proxies natively in the engine to address these issues. Unless specified otherwise, this RFC will refer to virtual proxies and state proxies as just proxies. Okay, so I guess this will be a rather technical RFC, but I hope that you can tell from how excited I am about this that like if this succeeds, just by reading the intro, I already get a feeling like Symfony will be able to benefit from this so much. Doctrine, Laravel probably as well. So you know, this is just and it will be more performant, right? And it will be more convenient. And wow, so yeah, PHP 8.4, great release. Lazy objects are standard Zend objects whose initialization is deferred until one of their properties is accessed. Okay, including non-existing ones. So you create a lazy object. Well, I should probably wait until the examples. This is implemented using the same fallback mechanisms as get and set magic methods, triggered when an uninitialized property is accessed. No performance overhead is thus added to non-lazy use cases. Cool. Execution of methods or property hooks does not trigger initialization until one of them accesses a backed property. Okay. Not sure I fully understand what's said here, but again, there will be examples. A lazy object can be created via the reflection API with the user specifying an initializer function that is called when initialization is required. Cool. There are two kinds of lazy objects. Ghosts, these are initialized in place by the initializer function, or proxies. The initializer returns a new instance, and interactions with the proxy objects are forwarded to this instance. Okay, yeah, makes sense, and we'll see examples very soon. Internal classes are not supported because their state is usually not managed via regular properties. This also applies to subclasses of internal classes. Okay. It should be noted that the proposed reflection API has been tested successfully on Doctrine and the Symfony projects. Great, allowing to remove a bunch of hard to maintain code. I want to take a look here. How hard? Ooh, yeah, like 900, almost 1,000 deletions. That's nice. Oh yeah, look at that. Yeah. Okay, I don't understand any of this code, but yeah, I mean, this is having written a very simple implementation that works for me. I'm already super excited. So yeah. Okay, while improving transparency of lazy objects and keeping the test suite green with the same public API. This is great proposal. The RFC proposes adding the following members to reflection class and reflection property classes. So a bunch of new methods on reflection class and a bunch of new methods on reflection property. New lazy ghost, new lazy proxy, reset, blah, 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 blah. We'll see them in action here. Creating a lazy object. So the entry point to create a lazy object are the reflection class new lazy ghost and new lazy proxy methods. And remember that this is not something a user would do directly. There is always a container in between. There is an ORM in between. So there is a place within the framework that will construct these lazy ghost and proxies for you. You don't have to worry about it as a user, but it's super cool. So okay, let's see here. This is interesting. So this is our class. It has a private int foo property. We have an initializer, which is a static function which gets a my class, an instance of my class. This is the ghost approach, right? And and it will call construct on it with a specific input, right? Then we create a reflector on that class. We create an object which is a ghost, and I believe nothing will happen. Okay, so at this point, this code isn't executed. But we do have an object of my class. That's the interesting part here. So we can pass object to any function that requires my class, but it will only trigger this code as soon as, I guess, a property is accessed or something like. We'll see that somewhere down the line here. Creating a lazy proxy requires the use of lazy proxy method. So that's the same, but the difference is instead of getting an existing object here, we create a new object from an existing one. Okay, I'm not sure when you would need to use this one, but I'm sure there will be examples here. So the reset as lazy methods accept an already created instance. This allows writing classes that manage their own laziness. So let's see what happens here. We have a new reflector on the class. Okay, yeah, interesting. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, whoa, So you you don't need like an ORM or a container in between. A class can construct itself, then reset itself as a lazy proxy, and then define a new initializer. Nice. This is so cool. I don't know if like everyone who's watching feels the same kind of like enthusiasm as I do about it. But let me tell you, having spent some time writing this kind of code and wishing that something like this exists, it makes me very happy. Okay. Handling the state of lazy objects. Any access to properties of a lazy object triggers its initialization, including via reflection property. However, certain properties might be known ahead of time and should not trigger initialization when accessed. True. So I think, okay, so we have a blog post with an ID, a title, and content. We have a reflector here. We have an initializer that will initialize it. It will retrieve the title and content from the database, right? But we already know the ID, right? So we create a new lazy ghost over the post here. Yeah. So, okay, we have a lazy object now, a ghost object. Without this line, the following call to the reflection property set value would trigger initialization. Okay, so we get the ID property and we say skip lazy initialization for this object. If we don't do this, then whenever we access ID, it will perform the database query. Let's say that it like something that happens here. Oh, super cool. So we can skip, certain properties. And I'm already thinking like an attribute, because I have this lazy attribute here, right? So you can also do it the other way around. Only make properties that are lazy actually trigger the initialization. Cool, yeah. Alternatively, you can use this directly. Set raw value without initialization. Okay, yeah, gotcha. Yeah, makes sense. But this probably only happens once. So when you access ID, the next time it would still initialize the object. This is so great. This is so nice. The skip initializer here, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Methods provide ways to disable lazy initialization when a property is accessed, allowing users to choose the approach that best fit their design. So nice. Dynamic properties trigger initialization like declared properties. Using skip lazy initialization or set raw value without lazy initialization on a dynamic property throws a reflection exception. This is actually interesting. Dynamic properties. So I'm thinking about Eloquent here, because Eloquent might actually not be so easy to add this to, because Eloquent relies on not having properties. Everything are the magic properties, basically. Everything goes via get and set. So, and that's something I and Doctrine as well do very differently. We define the properties. That's our starting point. We don't create a model that's filled with whatever data comes from the database. So that's a whole different approach. And so I actually think Eloquent might not be able to benefit from this. Okay. Lifecycle of lazy objects. An object is considered lazy if any of its properties are still hooked to the initializer passed to the new lazy and reset as lazy methods that are made. Okay, hang on a second. An object is considered lazy, yeah, if any of its properties are still hooked to the initializer passed to the new lazy and reset as lazy methods that made it lazy. Yes. There are 3 ways to make a lazy object non-lazy. Yeah. Interacting with it in a way that triggers its initialization. Okay, so as soon as its initializer was triggered, the object becomes non-lazy. I guess that's what this says. Using reflection property, skip lazy initialization, or yeah, on all. Okay, use it on this on properties. Yes. Calling the reflection class initialize lazy object or mark lazy object as initialized. Yeah, with the instance as the argument. Okay. The mark lazy object as initialized method allows marking a lazy object as non-lazy without running the initializer. Yeah, this is what I was wondering about. With uninitialized properties set to their default values, if any. This is useful for managed entity objects. Accessing a typed object before it is set throws an uninitialized property error if it has no default value. Yeah. Initialization triggers. By the way, this is a long RFC. Yeah, there is a lot of things. I don't think we'll go through all the details here, but I want to get like a good understanding of what the RFC is about. Except for the special cases listed below, any attempt to observe the state of a lazy object will trigger its initialization. This ensures that the result of the observation is the same as if the object were already initialized, maintaining full transparency. These triggers include, but are not limited to, reading or writing a property, testing if a property is set, calling reflection property get, yes, reflection object get properties, cloning. Okay, yeah, cloning. There will be something to say about cloning as well. Now, this behavior makes lazy objects fully transparent to their consumers. Yeah. The following special cases do not trigger initialization of a lazy object. Okay, so there are a bunch of things that don't trigger initialization, sure. By excluding these cases from triggering initialization, developers can perform certain operations on lazy objects without causing them to initialize, providing finer control over the initialization process. What I'm wondering about is, so yeah, let's say I have 2 relations here. So let's say I access the first relation and do initialization for that. Then there's another uninitialized property still. So accessing that will re-trigger initialization, I guess. Let's see here, let's scroll a bit up to, so this was calling construct, but I guess you have fine-grained control here. You could say well, no, because you don't know which property is being accessed here. Okay, maybe there will be some more information about that later. So, initialization sequence. Before calling the initializer for ghost objects, properties that were not initialized with reflection property, yes, are initialized to their default value, if any. In the same way, using new instance without constructor on reflection. And then second, the object is marked as non-lazy by detaching it from its initializer. Okay, during initialization, properties can be accessed directly without triggering recursive initialization. Accessing properties without a default value may throw an error as usual. Yeah, the initializer must return null or no value. If the initializer returns something other than null, a type error is thrown. Okay, after initialization, the object is indistinguishable from an object that was never lazy. Okay, so this is what happens like when initialization is triggered. So this happens right before the initializer is called, this happens during, and this is the return. Okay, proxy objects are different, apparently. Before calling the initializer, the object is marked as non-lazy by detaching it from its initializer. Unlike ghost objects, non-skipped properties are not set to their default values, as this would cost some CPU cycles for no reason. Okay, because with proxy objects, we're creating a new object, right? Instead of working on the existing one. The initializer is called with the lazy proxy as first parameter. Yes. The return value of the initializer has to be an instance of the same class as the lazy object or a parent, as long as the proxy does not declare additional properties. Or a parent. Yeah, okay. Yeah. The real instance is set to the return value. The real instance is set to the return value. I got that. The value of properties used with reflection properties, skip lazy initialization or etc. blah 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 is discarded as if unset is called. Yeah, so the skipped ones are discarded. After that, any property access on the proxy is forwarded to the real instance. This includes declared, dynamic, non-existing, or properties used with. Okay. So if I get that correctly, with the proxy objects, you create a new object where you can once again attach an initializer to for the next unset property. I think this answers my question about having two separate relations and only wanting to load the one you want to load, but I'm still not sure how to know which one we're trying to access. The proxy object is not replaced or substituted for the real instance. After initialization, I cannot say that word. After initialization, property accesses on the proxy are forwarded to the real instance. Observing properties of the real instance have the same result as observing the corresponding properties of the proxy. Okay, the real instance is allowed to escape the proxy and to create direct references itself. This is demonstrated in the section named about proxies. The proxy may be released independently of the real instance when it's not referenced anymore. Okay, this is about memory management. The proxy and real instance have distinct identities. Okay. Although the initializer receives the proxy object as the first parameter, it is not expected to make changes to it. This is allowed, but any changes will be lost during the last step. Oh yeah, so no. However, the proxy object can be used to make decisions based on the value of some initialized property. This is why this is passed, yeah. Or on the object, on the class or the object, or on its identity. For example, the initializer may use the value of an initialized property. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, so you could have one initializer and have like a model interface, and based on the concrete instance, do new things. Okay, I'm still not sure. How do you know which property is actually like triggering the initialization? That's still a question I have on my mind. Let's see here. We have these methods, but that doesn't really help us here, I think. Let's see, options. Yeah. These options are available. Skip initialization, skip destructor. These can be passed here. It says nothing about properties. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure yet. Let's continue. Common behavior. After a successful initialization, the initializer function is not retained anymore by this object, and it may be released if it's not referenced anywhere else. The scope and this of the initializer function is not changed, and usual visibility constraints apply. Visibility should not be a concern for the common use case of calling the constructor. Okay, yeah. However, for more complex use cases where the initializer wishes to access non-public properties, it is required to bind the initializer function to the right scope with bind, or to access properties with reflection property. Yeah, okay, that's fine. If the initializer throws, I don't know if I want to read through all of that. These are like important details, of course, but I'm actually interested. Like, I want I want to know how to solve my use case, basically. Let's see here. The new lazy ghost method initiates an object without calling the constructor. But this is, yeah, okay, the default API stuff. Let's scroll through here and see whether there's an answer to my question. Yeah, I'm at the end of the RFC and I don't really find an answer to my question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send Nicolas a message and ask about it. Maybe I misunderstood something. Maybe not. I will write the answer in the comments down below and you can check it out there. And then you can also leave a like. Is that a good idea? Yeah, I think so. Anyway, regardless of like this specific question, such a great RFC. I'm so looking forward to having this in PHP. It's going to be so useful for so many cases, even though most cases will be in the framework code, and like on a daily basis, you won't actually have to deal with it. But still, so cool. And let's refresh here because people are voting. Well, voting count is the same, but 15 vote yes, 4 votes no. So, given like how many people vote on RFCs these days, I'm already pretty confident saying that this will end up in PHP 8.4, but don't quote me on that yet. Let's see, the RFC the voting runs until the 11th of August. So yeah, I'm fairly confident it will pass. It's a great RFC. We skipped over like the very detailed, let's see here, the very detailed API explanation as well as cloning and stuff. But that's fine. You can read about that in the RFC. I'll leave a link in the description to it, of course. I'll leave a link to this blog post as well. This was a really fun blog post to write. So you can check it out if you want to as well. Don't forget to leave that like, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye-bye. Okay, hang on. I just got word back from Nicolas, and I understand it now. You know how it happens that you're so focused on a specific solution that you just forget the super obvious, and you probably were already screaming it in the comments as well, where you left a like, I hope. But no, it's super easy. So instead of having these properties uninitialized, what I need to do is initialize these properties as empty objects, basically. So there will be an author here. There will be an array of chapters here. Well, an empty array and actually an empty collection class. I'll come back to that. And both of these classes, they will have initializers. So they will be empty, but as soon as you access not author, but one of its properties, so book, new book, book author, as soon as you do something like this, I should probably have public string name. As soon as you do this here, the database will, like the framework will perform a new query. And with my solution, it's doing it as soon as I access this. Now, that doesn't really matter where you're doing it, because the result will be the same. If you just access book author and do nothing with it, it doesn't matter if there's data in it or not. So that's great. It also poses a new problem because of arrays here. I actually need some kind of collection here that can be initialized, Which, well, I need to think about how to do that. So basically the code I wrote yesterday, I'll have to refactor it. But that's totally fine. It's such a nice RFC. I'm super happy with it. And I know what to do. So now I'll see you for real in the next video. Bye-bye.